very excited to introduce our first speaker. He's got a very impressive resume, and I want you all to hear as much from him as possible. So instead of reading out his biography, it's written on the page in front of you, and you can check that out at your own leisure. But instead of leading with that, I will just say that our first speaker, Professor Spencer Overton, runs the Multiracial Democracy Project at George Washington University and is the co-chair of the More Equitable Advisory Board Committee. Thank you so much, Spencer. Thanks for being here.
So before I begin, I want to thank More Equitable Democracy for convening Lift Every Voice, for continuing to carry forward Lani's vision. I want to especially thank George Chung. George, thank you so much for your leadership here. Thank you so much. Want to thank the Minnesota organizers and community leaders who are really doing hard work every day. They're here on the ground and really on the front lines in this moment. Thank all of you for being here in terms of doing all the work you do. Lani was a brilliant scholar, right? You all know she was the first woman of color to become a tenured professor at Harvard Law School. She was a former NAACP LDF lawyer, one of the most important democratic thinkers of the last half century. But, you know, I'm also fortunate, you know, Lani was a friend, a mentor to me personally, as she was, I know, to some in this room, like Cynthia Terrell Ritchie here and others. Lani and I clerked for the same judge, Damon Keith, and when I was a fellow at Harvard, preparing to become a law professor, she let me teach some of her classes. She gave me feedback on my work here. She challenged my assumptions. She was generous, direct. She was never interested in easy answers. She certainly respected scholars, but she particularly kind of uplifted organizers, right? People doing the hard work of building power in communities, too often excluded from it. What I remember most was not simply her intellect, but certainly her moral clarity. She had a way of asking a question that made you realize that maybe you'd been asking the wrong question or accepting the wrong premises all along, right? She could see something coming long before many of us did. She understood that the Voting Rights Act, as transformative as it was, would eventually run into a Supreme Court increasingly hostile to race-conscious remedies here. She told us we needed to think bigger. She urged us to consider proportional representation. Right, so that's why we're here today. Lift Every Voice exists because Lani understood that our struggle is not just about protecting old victories, but designing new systems for a truly multiracial nation. We all know our country was never really designed to be a multiracial democracy. We know about conquest, you know, enslavement, you know, naturalization for citizenship that was explicitly limited to white persons of good character here, that it was not intended originally to include everyone, right? And we all know that one of the great turning points came in 1965, like on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in terms of Selma, that led to the Voting Rights Act. And the same year, a really important legislative pronouncement, the Immigration and Nationality Act, which ended the national origin quotas that had explicitly favored white immigrants from Northern and Western Europe, right? In about 1960, in 1960, about 75% of immigrants living in the United States came from Europe. Today, that number is about 10%. In 1960, people of color were about 15% of the US population. You all know that number is over 40% now. You know, in 1960, fewer than 3% of members of the US House were people of color. Today, that number is 28%, right? But we've seen as a result of some cultural anxiety, like backlash. Zoli's work really goes to this in terms of racial polarization. And Ashley Jardina talks about white identity politics. And we're living through this right now. We see attacks on diversity and inclusion programs framed as we got to stop reverse discrimination, so-called, right? We see attacks on museums, libraries, honest teaching about our history here. For the first time in our history, we see the federal government enshrining English as the official language and scaling back language assistance for people with limited English proficiency, right? As if speaking a language other than English makes you less American. Right? We see refugee policies that suspend admissions broadly, right, while creating special pathways for white Afrikaners from South Africa. We see a Supreme Court that purports to be colorblind, but then effectively endorses race, accent, and language as reasons for an immigration stop, right?
Okay.
Minnesota has become a front line of resistance where immigrant communities, local organizers, ordinary residents have pushed back here, refusing to let fear define public life. And obviously, that has come at a terrible cost for residents like Alberto Mondragon, Renee Good, and Alex Preddy, right? This is not random. It's a politics of cultural anxiety. It's a backlash against pluralism here, right? And the Supreme Court, like we said, it's been complicit. In Shelby County, we know the court scaled back Section 5 it was actually Section 4, but it neutered Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. Now we face Calais versus Louisiana, a decision the U.S. Supreme Court could issue over the next couple of months, Michael. Black Louisianans make up 1/3 of the state's population, David, but for years they had a real opportunity to elect only one of 6 members of Congress. Under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, courts required Louisiana to create a second opportunity district. White voters, as you all know, challenged that remedy, arguing that this was somehow unconstitutional here. So now, if the Supreme Court embraces that theory, we know that it could significantly scale back Section 2. That wouldn't stop just in Louisiana. As Black Voters Matter has noted, we could lose 12 to 19 Black and Latino opportunity congressional districts, right? It could threaten hundreds of state legislative, county, city council, school board districts where Asian American, Indigenous, African American, Latino communities have fought for decades to secure representation. And when we challenge these maps in court, the response will be, we didn't do it because of race, we did it for partisan advantage, for political reasons, right? And with this court, that defense could succeed. Now, Lani saw this coming. She understood that if winner-take-all districts were the only tool that we had, a hostile court can take democracy away from us district by district. She urged us to think differently, right? Now, you all know this already, but I just lay it out on the table here. Proportional representation means a simple thing. A group's share of votes should translate into roughly the same share of seats in the legislature, right? So if Black voters in Louisiana are about 1/3 of the electorate and they vote together, they should be able to elect about 1/3 of the congressional delegation, roughly 2 of the 6 seats here, right? Now, one thing to point out, though, is electoral systems reform is not an end of itself, right? This is not a technocratic hobby here for us. This isn't a debate club sparring piece here, right? This is about who governs. You know, this is about power sharing and really being at the table, Cliff, right? You know, if our government consistently fails to represent the will of the people, you know, we don't have to just accept that, right? Like, we can build something better, right?
Yes, yes. Get that.
So that's why all of you matter, right? Like local racial justice groups, national civil rights organizations in this room, community organizers, Fred, tribal leaders, immigrant advocates, voting rights lawyers. What we're doing here is not preserving the past, right? It's charting the beginning of a new multiracial democracy, right? You know, one where representation is not, you know, charity, where diversity is not symbolic here. It's one where power is actually shared, right? Lani believed this was possible. Now it's our job to build it. So thank you so much for coming together. We're gonna have a great time together.
Hey, if you made it to the end of the video, you must have liked what you saw. So you should head over to our website, equitabledemocracy.org, so you can sign up for our mailing list and stay up to date on all the new things we're working on. Also, if you want to head back to our YouTube channel, you can listen to our award-winning podcast, watch riveting documentaries, or check out new content just like this.